Okay, welcome back, Calm 302 and YouTube. Continuing where we left off in the last video, the next question I'm going to answer is, are there any pros or cons from deviating or for deviating from the usual pattern of touch? Firstly, as I talked in my presentation and kind of presented it, normally in a romantic relationship, you will usually start, or the couple, the people involved in the relationship, will usually start out with bonding or emotion building touches, things like holding hands, just kind of sitting on the couch together, cuddling, general um, touching in a non-sexual kind of way. And as the two people begin to become comfortable with each other and become kind of emotionally bonded and willing to trust the other person, then the level of touch tends to increase into more specific bonding touches as well as caregiving touches, and then ultimately it will move towards sexual touch, kind of as an end goal for the process. Um, as for this particular question, are there any pros or cons for deviating from the usual pattern of touch? Yes, mostly cons. These patterns are determined by human nature and by social norms and are usually unconscious for both the person doing the touching and the person being touched. A person touching another person will most likely follow the usual pattern unless they are specifically trying not to, or unless forming a relationship is not their intent, i.e., their intent is hostile, or they simply want the person to do something for them, like stand aside, let them pass. What's more, if the usual pattern is not followed when the person being touched, or then the person being touched, will likely be fairly uncomfortable and kind of put on guard. For example, if you meet a person and immediately try to kiss them, they're probably going to be a little bit taken aback and probably going to be on the defensive. There are sometimes exceptions to this, usually where sexual touch is involved. At a venue such as a nightclub, where people are looking to get physical quickly, it might not be such a problem if you cut fairly quickly into sexual touch. But even in situations like this, there will usually be at least a little bit of more general touch first so that the two people can get a feel for each other and so that the partner's intimacy can kind of get a base to start from here. And actually, in this kind of situation, caregiving touch can also apply too. For example, like if you're at a nightclub and you're meeting somebody and they have to use the restroom or something like that, if you hold their drink for them, or usually not their purse, I suppose, but if you're going to hold their drink for them or something like that, then it does kind of go a long way towards you and or for you in terms of building trust with that person, and they're probably going to be more willing to allow you to start to move into more heavy forms of touch. Um, and really, one of the main purposes of the earlier forms of touch is to build trust and physical comfort. And usually, this has to be present on some level before people are willing to go farther. So, yes, generally, any sort of deviation from the normal pattern of touch, although, again, it's usually not going to be conscious, so it's not likely to happen. But generally, if you are in a situation where the touch doesn't happen in a way that follows a normal pattern, then generally, yes, it will be kind of off-putting for the other person and might prevent you from being able to take a relationship as far as you might wish it to go. Next question: how can you work through a fear of touch in a relationship? That will oftentimes depend on both the intensity of the fear and the person who is afraid. For example, most people are kind of shy about touching and kissing when they first begin to experiment with romance, and they may be nervous about a first kiss, but will often become much more confident as they gain experience. If someone is hesitant about touch because of past experience, it can get more complicated. Obviously, if somebody has a serious issue with being touched, they might want to see a professional for help or counseling. Again, I am not a professional, so don't take anything I say as a weighty thing here, because I really don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, if the issue isn't too serious, then trust can go a long way toward helping to heal the problem. Touches such as holding hands or even sitting next to each other with shoulders touching is a good way to start building comfort with touching another person. This way you're kind of just getting used to the idea of touching them, even though you're not really specifically touching each other in a way that's inherently sexual or honestly even inherently very emotionally invested. You're just kind of touching the way normal people might touch or interact in their daily lives. And although it doesn't sound like much, little things do kind of tend to build up, and we take past good experiences from little things and become more comfortable with going a little farther. So, and as trust becomes more apparent, simple neutral caregiving touches such as fastening, I don't know, like a stubborn bracelet clasp or something like a light back scratch might also go a long way towards establishing trust and comfort with another person. Just kind of showing them that you're willing to be gentle and careful and generally respect their space while still um, touching them in a manner that's a little more intimate than just kind of like holding their hand or sitting next to them. The key to anything like this is to pay attention to how the person is reacting and to not push them past the point where they are comfortable. If you respect a person's comfort level, then in time it will likely become more tolerant as they come to trust you and become comfortable around you. And then from there, you theoretically may be able to initiate more deeper levels of trust and touch as you become more comfortable around each other. Next question. What touch do you find the most important for longevity of a relationship you want to pursue long term? Kind of a personal question here. Well, personally, I find that um, touch to build and maintain attachment, so bonding touch, is the most important in a relationship. I find that caregiving touch usually occurs as needed and desired, and passionate touch is sometimes more frequent and sometimes less so. But if I meet up with my partner and I have no desire to touch her or kiss her simply because I'm glad to see her, then I know something is really wrong with the relationship. Would you say that the pattern of these touches, which is again, care or um, bonding touch and caregiving touch, leading to generally, actually, this is another step I forgot to talk about earlier, but one of the other kind of minor steps that usually occurs in a relationship as it's being formed is public displays of affection. Something like holding hands in public, light kissing in public, putting your arms around each other. And this usually kind of comes kind of in the intermediate stages of bonding touch when you're still kind of getting to know each other. PDA or publicly touching each other has a couple different things that it does. Firstly, it kind of symbolizes to everybody else around you that, hey, we're a couple, you treat us as such, please. It also kind of reassures the other person that you're there for them. And it's also kind of a caregiving touch a little bit. If you're in that crowded area, it's kind of nice to have somebody holding your hand or have their arm around you, I guess. Or I guess if you're the guy like me, then it's kind of nice for the girl sometimes to have an arm around her to kind of, show that you're going to protect her. But anyway, would you say that the pattern of these touches, caregiving leads to, or not caregiving, but bonding touch leads to caregiving touch leads to sexual touch, is changing in current times? I really don't believe they are. I think that the speed at which people go through these phases while forming a relationship may have changed. And as I said earlier, I think there are situations where two people might jump very quickly into the sexual touch stage, but I think that in most cases, any sort of relationship involving touch is going to go through an initial stage of relationship building touch before sexual touch is established, even if that initial stage progresses so quickly as to barely be consciously noticeable by the partners. An example there again would be like in a nightclub. You might meet somebody and move fairly quickly and um, dancing in a manner that might be very sexual. But generally, if you're actually, at least both, if the two of you aren't so drunk as to be unable to care at all, generally there'll be kind of some lower level touching before you just get right into it. So, um, no matter how excited two people are, they really are unlikely to move into passionate touch without at least getting a feel for how the other person moves and responds, and establishing a little bit of a trust or comfort level with the person. Caregiving touch is less applicable to such a scenario, but people still want to know that they'll be taken care of if they go home with somebody they just met. So, to some extent, yeah, if you want to take Um, if you want to kind of pursue some of the heavier levels of touch there, usually you do kind of have to lay the groundwork and establish that level of trust with the person. So, and there I'm actually going to end this video. I will be back in just a moment.